Hello fellow humans, today I want to talk about the Vickers CR because I've been using this tank quite a lot in raiding battles, and there is a pretty damn good reason why. Not alone because of my very wonderful time in tier 10. There is a very good reason for that because, as you know, raiding battles is 4 tiers: 10, 9, 8 and 7. If you have a tank that is a tier 9 that basically plays almost like a tier 10, you have a massive advantage. You get into a tier 8 battle, you can absolutely destroy people. And if you get into a tier 10 battle, if you're good enough, you still won't have a disadvantage, because if you lose in a raiding battle, whoever gains points is the best player on a team. To be the best player on the team, you have to have the most XP. Now, what happens when you're a lower tier tank shooting at a higher tier tank? Exactly, you get more XP. So I think that tier 9 is the perfect tier for raiding, given that you don't end up in tier 10 a majority of the time. Like, say if you have 80% in tier 10 battles, it might not be that great, but if it's 50-50 between tier 8 and tier 10, you're gonna have a great time. Now, let's have a look at the Vickers CR. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and special thank you to my channel members. Now we have a look at the stats and why particularly this one. Now, it's the combination of all the factors. I mean, it has extremely good weapon handling, which is gonna be hard to miss. You have very good dispersion, you have 10 degrees of gun depression, which, for example, only a AMX-30 in this comparison can match. However, the 30 has less penetration, less alpha damage, and less DPM even. And this thing has 290 heat rounds as well, which is quite a lot. And not even a T-54, with its formerly 330 heat pen, can match that. So it is a very good tank. And with 290, you can definitely match some tier 10 armor. And 320 if you use calibrated. I personally don't. 320 would be plenty enough to go through pretty much everything. So another thing about this tank that is great, it's a light tank, so it obviously doesn't have any armor, but it even does have a bit. It can bounce some shots. You know, it's not completely paper thin. HEing is somewhat difficult as well, and the front of the turret is also pretty well armored if you hit the wrong spot. And the mobility of this thing is a bit less light tank-like than it could be. However, the powder weight ratio is pretty much on par with that Object 84, and is obviously outperforming something like an E50 by quite a lot. And that is also pretty important for raiding battles, because here's the thing: if you know that you're losing, you have to stop playing as if you're trying to win, and instead pull back, get yourself into a position where you have an accurate gun, where you have high DPM, and where you have good mobility, and you play from a spot. You get those extra damage, so even if you know that you're going to lose, you can still be the top player, because that's how raiding works. And for that, I think the Vickers CR is an amazing tank for it, if you know how to play it. As I already mentioned earlier, the gun mantlet is pretty well armored and can produce some bounces, and the front plate's also pretty well angled. Obviously, everyone's going to go through, however, you can avoid getting HE'd for the most part. Another great thing about this tank, while it's very high, it's not very big in terms of its width. See, it's a very small head, so if you wiggle this thing back and forth, it can be pretty hard to hit it. I mean, obviously a Centurion is absolutely massive, but it still is a pretty small target on the turret. If you have your 10 degrees of gun depression, it's going to be pretty hard to hit that turret. The worse player you are, the more mistakes you make. So, more armor, you can make more mistakes. Less armor, you have room for less mistakes. That is also a mistake, but more on that later. See how it turns out. Now, this is obviously not a raiding battle, because I already completed the raiding battle mission and I want to go back down again. T100, are you aware of what you're doing? Seemingly not. That would obviously be great if they're not out here. If all the enemies are over there, we can easily take it to map control, and we have an absolutely beautiful advantage here with me and the Object 140. So that would very much go into our favor, especially with that tortoise just camping at the back. There's 290 heat, and it will just go straight through. Now, he's going to have a hard time trying to avoid. Now, if you shoot a tank that's unspotted, if you get shot, your camo rating actually slightly goes down. Well, that's why you got respotted there. It's not much, but it is a tiny amount. So, let's see. 183. That is very tasty. And you can clearly see how I play this vehicle. Like, you don't want to get too up close with this thing. This is not like a brawling tank. It can very much do that. However, you have an extremely accurate gun. You have 10 degrees of gun depression. Why would you not do something like this and just harass tank destroyers? Especially 183s, because honestly, fuck 183 players. So, let's see. Is that guy gonna peek over the top? Yes, he is, but is it gonna be just enough to get a shot? Not quite. Now, let's try and push the 183, because, I mean, it's a 183, and the faster and quicker we can get rid of all of them, the better place splits will become. So, hello. And now, obviously the 140 already got shot by the 183, which means he's not gonna get shot again. But this is what we're gonna have to do here. Just peek one by one. If the 183 looks at the object, I peek. If the 183 looks at me, the object peeks, and that is the perfect way to pull that off. And that is already 2.6k damage, and the enemies are screwed, pretty much. So, now, they just got overwhelmed. These guys did a pretty good job at holding it as well, and that is very nice. And that's the thing. Going city is gonna work if the enemy team is worse than yours. Then it absolutely does work, and in this case, it worked out beautifully. However, if the enemy team would have went field, it would have been a problem. And there we go. That's 3 kills, like 3.9k. Ain't bad. Now, let's get the second one. And this tier 8 this time, which is going to be very much easier, because this tank, I would very much classify this tank as like a tier 9.5. It's obviously not a tier 10 by any means. However, it can definitely match the combat ability of an MX-30B. So, you know, it's the same as the worst tier 10, so you might as well put it there. Now, the Borsig is camping, and that's what Borsigs do. Let's see, where are they? Hello, hello, hello. Oh, there's a Centurion. 5-1, not 7-1. And there you go! The turret armor. It can work. It's the mantlet. Look at the gun mantlet. It can block quite a bit of shots. That's just insane. I mean, this vehicle had its armor nerfed 5 or 6 times at this point, I think, but at least 4 times. And it's still good. Like, I don't know. This thing's just... If you take the Object 84 as a comparison, it's a joke to what this thing can do. So now, we have 2 camp... Well, 1 road trip heavy, 1 camping heavy. That's never a good idea. But if our boy can conclude with this road trip sooner than later, that would be very nice. Okay, now, what I'm going to do, though, I'm going to actually go over on this side, because you don't want to be in the way where the enemy is pushing. You generally don't want to do that ever, because obviously, if the enemy is pushing you, then you're the one that's getting shot, and you die, and then you can't be effective. So, basically what I'm saying is throw 40%ers under the bus. So, to be a good player. That's how it works. Any good player that tells you different, you throw bad players under the bus to do more damage. Being a good player is a selfish business. Okay? That's how it works. Alright. Let's see. Because the point is, if you take shots for someone that's not going to return any shots, you're making a bad trade. Just like I'm going to make a bad trade right here. So, at this point, what we're going to have to do is, again, just stay cool and stay in a position where I can get absolutely free shots and the enemy is absolutely not looking at me. The thing is, in a super heavy, like a mouse or a Type 71, obviously you can play that completely differently, and you can absolutely go for it. But a tank like this, your team is your bitch, basically. And that's just how these tanks work. Same with the Batchat, same with pretty much any light tank. If you want to play well with them, you go for a spotting run at the beginning, you find out where the hell the enemies are, and then you sit in a place where no one can shoot you, but you can get all the shots. That's how it works. So, not too bad there. Another 2.6k, and yeah, it's not that bad. I mean, the 50 TP has ended his road trip in hell, but it will be alright because we'll win. 3. I mean, obviously, I don't want to fight him too much. He can 3-shot me at this point, but well, I can do the same to him, but he's going to obviously reload faster than me. 7.3 for a tier 9. With this kind of accuracy, with this kind of mobility, and with this kind of weirdly, unreasonably effective armor. And, not to forget, it has good HE rounds as well. That's on top, right? It's not full hash, but it is a pretty damn good HE round. So, unlike my aim, that's not very good. But, it has everything. This thing is still a piece of art. And, if you know what you're doing, if you are a good player, you will absolutely have an amazing time with it. So, tier 50, I would even say that it's slightly better than the tier 10. Just a bit. But, overall, it is a tank that is very much worth getting, because not only is it great, the FE301 is a pretty good tank in its own right as well, and the Vickers Light is a solid tier 10 too. But, let's have a look. If you compare both of them, you basically have more penetration, tiny bit more speed, bit more rotation, and a bit more hit points. And other than that, the rate of fire doesn't really change that much, and the armor doesn't change either. So, tier 50, I would say the Vickers Cruiser is better. And I would definitely recommend picking this tank up if you're a good player and you haven't already. Thank you very much for watching. See you next one. Goodbye!